Hey everyone, it's Andrea. So right now we're going to go over part two of this week's lecture for week 7. And the first article that we're going to look at is the article by Dillon, Kent, and Malat, a supervisory system for accomplishing long-range projects. So a little background. The study was... a little background. So most managers in general have talked with some claim that they have trouble motivating people to work effectively on projects that are concerned with long-range goals. And projects such as the development of elaborate computer programs, MBO systems, grant proposals and reports, and research development. And the causes of this problem do seem to be twofold. First, the consequences are too weak to maintain much long-range work behavior. And then second, the consequences for completing behavior are strong enough that the competing behavior displaces the long-range work behavior. So sometimes it can be that the built-in or intrinsic consequences are fairly weak, especially if a person has been working on a given task for some time, since the reward value of much work seems to greatly decrease after the novelty wears off. Overall, what they did in this present study is they used a supervisory system to deal with a non-reoccurring task, and this is the MA thesis project. However, it differed from two studies that involved dissertation writing in the following ways. The first thing they did is they specified all tasks. They specified tasks at all stages of the project, not only writing but in reading, implementing, and presenting. And then second, the MA thesis is a long-range project with activities extending from 6 months to 2 years. So often taking roughly around 600 hours to complete. So the present research involved longer sustained activity on the project tasks than the writing part of the dissertations. And then third, a point system was also involved, but two different types of motivating consequences were used concurrently, both positive and negative points. Completion of a project task by its deadline earned a positive point, and non-completion earned a negative point, which is an avoidance procedure. And then fourth, the point system was backed by formal evaluation and procedure rather than monetary incentive. And both point totals were to be used later as part of letters of recommendation. And then more specifically, this research dealt with the rate of completing research tasks as a function of weekly feedback combined with an incentive program involving points of a letter of recommendation. So the subjects were 15 master students, and they were all under one faculty advisor in a psychology department. And they had 3 doctoral candidates under the same faculty advisor, and they were the primary research supervisors. So this means they were also enrolled in the ABA program, and each received practicum credit for participating. The research interest of the master's student or the setting of the thesis implementation was determined which supervisor worked with which student. And the supervisors conducted the research meetings and they recorded all of the data. And then the second author did also serve as one of the supervisors. The setting was 4 different meetings. They had an individual meeting between the master student and his or her doctoral student advisor. And then they had a small group meeting between the doctoral student supervisor and all of their master students. And then they had a large group meeting composed of all of the master students and all supervisors and the faculty advisor. And they did this every 3 weeks. A meeting with the master student was individually conducted with the faculty supervisor. There was a point system that they used, and the doctoral student supervisor assigned 2 kinds of points to the master student's performance. They had a positive and a negative point system. And the master's student, you earned a positive point for writing and editing tasks and staying on task. And then they earned a negative point if they didn't meet the criterion for writing and editing those tasks. And it was possible for the students to do extra tasks each week. And then if they did extra tasks, they were able to earn extra points. So the dependent variables were... There was 8 students that entered the department in the current academic year composed of Group G, and as they were generating thesis proposals that could become thesis implementation. So the 5 students who were implementing their thesis design during the study made up Group 1. And the 2 students who were writing the final draft made up Group W. And so the first author was a member of Group 1. And the doctoral student supervisors checked the following tasks during the small group meetings. They looked at review of the article. So the master's students were required to read 1 article per week and then write a minimum of 100 words on a literature review from each article. And then they also looked at data presentation. So the students presented new data each week in a small group meeting, and if they were implementing their thesis research. And then they also looked at individual meeting attendance, which the students met weekly for a half hour on an individual basis with their doctoral supervisor. They looked at their log. So the 200-word log consisted of ideas, procedures, procedural changes, and relevant statements that came from the students. They also looked at self-report measures, where the students assumed the total number of hours worked on the thesis. They summed up the total number of hours that they worked each week for their thesis research activities. And this combined the meeting, reading, writing, and implementation of time. And then they looked at writing, they also looked at editing, and they looked at research proposal. And so during the research proposal, the students provided a 200-word statement of the general problem, the setting that they worked in, and the specific research recommendations. They did use a BAB reversal design, and the 3 phases were letters of recommendation and feedback, no letter and no feedback, and then letter of recommendation and feedback. The letter of recommendation and feedback included that the student received a weekly feedback form showing for each task and for the combined task the total number of positive and negative points that the student earned for the previous week, accumulating throughout the semester. And then during the no letter and no feedback phase, the students were told to continue to try to earn all positive points and receive no negative points. And the students continued to record those points, but the students did not receive the weekly feedback during the no feedback. They did collect IOA for this study, and IOA was between 89% and 99% for the study. So for the dependent variables, the master students showed a high rate of task completion when the letter and feedback were in effect, followed by an abrupt drop when the letter and feedback were not in effect. So this is suggesting that letter and feedback is almost necessary if you want to have high performance during these long-term maintenance tasks. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next article for this lecture. And the next article is going to be Jeffrey, Schultz, and Webb, 2012. And they looked at the performance effects of an ability-based approach to goal assignment. So, overall, goal theory has been under development for 40 years, and the main conclusion is that specific, difficult goals lead to higher levels of performance. And this result holds true provided that the achievement of the goal is attractive to employees and the employees feel that they can achieve the requisite level of performance. So when you're setting goals for your employees, you want to make sure that they can easily achieve them and that it's something that they will be proud of or that they feel like they can achieve. So the goal doesn't feel like it's unattainable. But however, a recent survey evidence suggests that many companies are not fully realizing the benefits of goal-setting programs that are linked to their incentives. So there's some background and research that shows that 83% of companies using a pay performance scheme, such as rewarding and goal attainment, claim that it was only somewhat successful or not working at all. And then in response to this evidence, LAC 2004 suggested that a key problem for companies using bonus for goal attainment schemes is identifying the right level of difficulty for the performance goals. So you want to make sure that these performance goals are easily attainable and easily achievable. So overall, in this study, they did make several contributions to the goal-setting literature. The first one is that they directly addressed calls for research examining the performance effects of tailoring goal assignment to individual ability levels. And although there has been extensive research on the impact of goals and incentives on performance, they were unaware of any studies that directly compared one goal for an all-assignment approach to one that considers ability differences. And then second, they extended recent work by Webb, Jeffrey, and Schultz, 2010, who examined a setting where employees at a Fortune 100 company self-selected their own performance goal from a menu of 3 choices. Differing in different levels of difficulty and bonus payouts. And so the company's objective was to increase employees' motivation by allowing them to choose a goal that was appropriate for their level of difficulty, appropriate for their level of ability. And results from this implementation and a host of other instances documented by an incentive firm that designs goal systems show that this approach improves performance compared to a single goal for all approach. So ideally, they were looking at individualizing the goals per employee instead of setting a main goal for the entire agency. So looking at one goal for all, almost exclusively goal-setting studies have employed or examined settings using a one goal for all approach. But under this approach, all individuals are assigned the same goal and given the same reward for that goal attainment. And as behavior analysts, we know that we need to individualize and tailor treatment and tailor goals for each individual person. And so then basically that under this approach, individuals we talked about are assigned the same goal and receive the same reward. And research employing the one goal for all approach generally shows that specific, challenging, but achievable goals lead to better performance than do your best or easy or very difficult goals. Moreover, providing a bonus for goal attainment can increase commitment to the assigned goal, leading to higher effort and performance as long as the goal is not perceived as being too difficult to achieve. A key characteristic for the one goal approach is that no attempt is made to tailor the goal to the individual's level of ability. Instead, goals are set based on the average attainability of particular target levels of performance are usually based on the distribution of prior performance for the same or the similar task. Therefore, it seems likely that the motivational effects of this approach will be the strongest when ability levels do not differ widely across individuals performing the same task. However, where large differences in ability exist, lower ability individuals will have more likelihood of achieving the goal and would therefore be unlikely to exert effort attempting to do so. So then an alternative approach to this is to assign goals based on the individual's level of ability. And ways of implementing this approach range from setting a unique goal for each individual and to have multiple goal levels which are assigned to individuals based on ability groupings as determined by past performance. This means by which ability could be assessed in practice is beyond the scope of this article. However, the researchers did acknowledge that this process would be likely to be complicated by factors such as shirking, incomplete or inaccurate data, on actual performance or situational factors that are beyond the control of the individual employee that impact performance. So under the ability groupings approach, individuals of similar level abilities would receive the same goal. To ensure that goals assigned under this approach motivate individuals to exert effort in accomplishing the task requirements, they still have to be at a challenging but achievable level. So studies have found that when very difficult goals are assigned, participants paid under a bonus for goal attainment scheme perform worse than those who paid on a fixed wage. Therefore, the extent to which bonus for goal attainment incentive schemes will have a positive effect on performance depends on the difficulty of the assigned goal and employees' perceived likelihood of achieving the goal. Since an ability-based goal assignment will create goals that are more attainable by lowering ability employees, the researchers believed that this is the group whose performance will be impacted the most. So then they also indicated that for lower ability individuals, they expected the ability-based goal assignment approach will have a positive effect on performance, though its impact through its impact on rewards. However, the researchers did also expect that this approach would have a negative impact on performance for lower ability individuals through its influence on their personal goals. Therefore, the relative strength of these two effects will determine the overall impact of the goal assignment approaches on performance. And they predicted that the reward effect will be stronger for two reasons. The first reason is that research shows that although assigned goals are interpreted by individuals as a signal of their capability, they also take into account their own ability levels when setting a personal goal. Moreover, in environments where performance feedback is available, individuals should be able to unambiguously assess the likelihood of achieving assigned goals. In addition, the research believed that repeated failure to achieve a goal assigned under one goal for all approach would weaken its positive effects on personal goals and performance. Second, they expected that the effects of goal assignment approach on the rewards earned by the individuals will be relatively constant over time as individuals experience success in attaining the goals and receiving their performance pay. So this should lead to more sustained effort and better performance overall with the employees. So one of the reasons that they implemented a goal-setting program was to motivate sustained performance over a period of time. And goals are typically established for regular intervals. So it's either for a week or for a month or over quarters, and then they're compared to the actual performance. Goals and associated rewards lose their motivational properties if individuals do not believe that they have a reasonable likelihood of attaining them. And research has shown that repeated failure to achieve an assigned goal can lead to decreases in performance over time. Individuals do get discouraged and they fail to internalize goals as they have a little chance of achieving. And accordingly, it is important that when assigning goals to choose a difficulty level that retains its positive effects on effort and performance for multiple periods. So for this study, they looked at 138 undergraduate students from a large Canadian university. And each participant completed the experiment in just one session, which lasted an average of 35 minutes. And so the lack of prior research using the ability goal assignment approach required that they had to make two key choices regarding their implementation. Their approach was not intended to be prescriptive, but they did believe that it is both defensible and implementable based on the goal-setting literature and pilot interviews with managers. So based on the interviews that they had with those managers, they used 3 goal difficulties levels that were based on 2 factors. First, the interviews indicated that there were 3 goal levels was consistent with the approach being used at the organization with whom they were working. Moreover, they suggested that the incremental cost of implementing a finer grain system with more than 3 goal levels or with individual goals for each employee would likely exceed the incremental benefits. And then second, the field data reported by Webb et al. 2010 provides direct evidence that organizations are experimenting with goal-setting programs using 3 levels of difficulty. They also employed a bonus for goal attainment scheme where the payout was increased linearly with the difficulty of the assigned goal. So to conduct this study, they used a computerized version of Child's 1983 decoding task, and they chose this task because it was very easily learned, permitting the participants to accurately gauge their level of ability. And it's also important because they asked the participants to report personal goals in each period. To motivate the participants to exert effort in the training period, they used a piece rate incentive scheme where they paid 5 cents for each number that was correctly decoded. The 8 minutes of after the 8 minutes of training they provided is comparable to other studies that have been used specifically with this type of task. So then after implementing the second training period, the bonus for goal attainment incentive scheme was used in the 3 production periods as they had previously described, and the test questions were used to assess participants' understanding of the scheme prior to beginning the production periods. And then the participants completed the 3 remaining production periods, and each lasted for 5 minutes. Before beginning each production period, there was a goal assigned to the participants, and they were then asked what their personal goal was for that period. A message appeared once participants achieved the assigned goal, and participants achieving the goal were able to continue decoding items in the remaining time, but they did not receive any additional incentive payment or for doing so. And then after completing the final production period, the participants responded to several questions gathering information about their background and reactions to the experiment. So they conducted the social validity and they collected demographic information. And then the participants were paid in cash with their average earnings. And on average, each participant received about $13 for the study. So the results of the study suggest that in the ability-based assignment condition, participants assigned with a goal of 70, 85, or 100 were classified as lower, medium, or higher ability. In the one goal condition for all, they classified participants based on the goal these participants would have been assigned had they been in the ability-based assignment condition. So they compared average performance in practice round 2 across the 2 conditions to check for any latent ability differences. And you can see the results in Table 1, but overall, the mean in the ability-based goal condition was higher during practice than in the goal for all for one group, but it wasn't significantly different. So they ran a few statistical analyses, and they found one problem with the analyses that they ran, and that was in Table 3, personal goals may be viewed as an endogenous variable, so affecting one goal condition into which the participants were placed. So they did repeated measures ANOVA to check the effect for personal goals, as well to confirm the impact of past rewards on performance. They also performed a mediation analysis using the method recommended. And so with that, the first step was to establish a relationship between the outcome variable and the main dependent variable. So the outcome variable was the performance, and the main independent variable was the goal-setting method. And finally, the effect of the main independent variable is recalculated with the mediators in the regression analysis. So you can see those results. And then overall, as predicted, lower ability individuals benefited most from the ability-based approach through its positive impact on the rewards they received via the incentive scheme. And although they set lower and likely more realistic personal goals, participants in the ability-based assignment condition significantly outperformed their counterparts in the one goal and likely more realistic goals. And although they set lower and likely more realistic goals, the ability-based assignment they outperformed, and they did not expect performance to differ for the higher ability individuals since the goals undersigned each approach were the same. And they were somewhat surprised to find that their medium ability participants continued to perform at higher levels for 2 of the 3 production periods, and the one goal for all conditions. However, the significant performance decrease in the 3rd period observed for those participants suggests that the drawbacks of a goal for all assignment approach were beginning to emerge. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next article for part 2 of our lecture, and that is the Lafleur and Heighton 1995, and they looked at improving the quality of hotel banquet staff performance. So overall, customer satisfaction is critical to organizational survival in the hotel and also in the restaurant business. And customers are becoming increasingly sophisticated with more education, leisure time, and discretionary income. They do demand efficient and high-quality service. And so as a result, hotel managers must develop creative strategies to ensure that they have customer satisfaction in the hopes of promoting or maintaining previous business. So they looked at a few articles, and they looked at a hotel that had no formal training program for the banquet staff, and each new staff member simply observed more experienced staff to learn about job procedures. So you could see that there wasn't a lot of training available, so thus it was plausible that some of the performance problems may have been due to lack of training. There's also no apparent deficiencies in the capacity of the staff to complete their jobs. So overall, the analysis suggested that an intervention package could prove that banquet staff performance if remediated deficits in the categories of antecedents, so training, feedback, and direction, equipment and procedures and consequences, which would be reinforcement, contingency, and promoting quality. So one strategy for correcting the deficit in direction would be to establish a task checklist system. And task checklists involve changing the antecedents for task completion by specifying the task components or the task sequence. And task checklists have been found to improve performance in meeting settings. And Bacon, Fulton, and Millot in 1982 suggested that workers would be likely to utilize checklists if they facilitate the completion of the task by clarifying criteria and proving task discrimination. And then Bacon also recommended requiring employees to provide specific information about completed tasks on the checklist and having supervisors review the checklist as a way to make them more helpful and more accurate. Another method of improving performance with staff would be to provide relevant and frequent feedback to the staff. And performance feedback has been defined as information provided to individuals about the quantity or the quality of past performance. Performance feedback is a well-documented procedure that has produced improvement in many work settings. And it includes characteristics such as simplicity and flexibility of implementation. It has a low economic cost, and there is an emphasis on positive aspects of performance, rapidity of effects, and the capacity to be combined with other inventions. Make feedback an attractive technique for improving performance. And then goal setting is an intervention that's frequently combined with performance feedback to improve the direction given to the employees. And research has been compared to the combination of goal setting and feedback to goal setting alone, or feedback alone has demonstrated that the combined intervention generally has been more effective. Another strategy for improving staff performance is to supply additional reinforcing consequences for desired levels of performance. So, Bazar et al. 1986 did conclude that developing functional differential consequences is the most effective approach to improving worker performance. So basically, when you decide on the type of reinforcement, you want to choose something that's going to be functional for that individual, not an overall reinforcement for everybody. You probably want to tailor it and make it a little more individualized. Monetary incentives have been used frequently as consequences to improve performance. And monetary consequences are often used in conjunction with other interventions. So goal setting, for example, has produced effective performance improvements when combined with performance contingent pay. So these studies all demonstrate that checklist systems, feedback, goal setting, and monetary incentives can be effective methods of improving employee performance. And then based on the analysis of banquet staff performance, a performance improvement plan was developed for the study, and the plan included a treatment package consisting of task checklists, graphic feedback, goal setting, monetary bonuses, staff training, and job aids. And the purpose of the study was to examine the effects of the treatment package on the accuracy of timeliness of hotel function setups. So the employees they used were 26 banquet employees, and the banquet manager and 3 banquet captains did not engage in setups, but they did record data, and they helped to expedite the project. So the employees were responsible for setting up different functions, setting up 11 different functions, which were morning coffee breaks, plated breakfast, buffet breakfast, express lunches, plated lunches, buffet lunches, plated dinners, buffet dinners, dinner receptions, bar and evening coffee breaks, and some of these functions could be completed by only one employee. The remaining functions were usually completed by several members of the banquet staff, and both morning and evening coffee breaks were set up at a maximum of 1 or 2 tables. So the behaviors and results of interest included all activities involved in setting up the banquet functions. So each function was comprised of many components, and the specific components were determined to help with the help of the banquet manager and the food and beverage manager. So the performance checklist served as the measurement system, as well as a component intervention package, and a setup completion percentage was derived from the checklist. They also measured customer satisfaction, so they took some social validity with the banquet service, and that was measured using a hotel questionnaire system. And they show you a picture of the checklist or the task list, or otherwise known as a task analysis of all the items that all of the tasks that they had to complete in order to meet their goals. And so the treatment package included equipment relocation, several antecedent components, and monetary bonuses. The antecedent components included the intervention of staff training, task checklist, job aids, goal setting, and daily performance feedback. And the task checklists were clarified the many